watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. I'm watching a movie that Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. I'm watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. I'm watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. I'm watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. I'm watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. I'm watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. Well, I'm watching it so you don't have to. So it's alright. It's
Is
alright.
it bad?
So far.
Is it that bad?
Well, no, I walked away. Like I walked away.
Oh.
I'm watching a movie that new movie about the failure guy that's out there. Timmy Failure. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Alright. Well, I'm watching it so you don't have to. So it's alright. It's
Is
alright.
it bad?
So far.
Is it that bad?
Well, no, I walked away. It's like I walked away.
Oh.
I'm watching a movie that
It was fast about the rest.
groups, 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 groups was relatively interviewers,
I don't know. So you're a
interviewers,
knee.
and phone was rather
Yeah, you'd
was
say
rather
knee is the best way to describe you. Or would you like to try that again?
Which is
Try
these
it again.
chants
Try it
these
again.
these
That was
these
a
Floyd
three
Floyd
words
Floyd Floyd because
describing
he
you.
often been asked Peter
Uh, not social first. I don't know. I don't know, to be honest.
Oh man,
Not
so
really think about
not
that.
social first. I don't know. So you're me. Yeah, you'd say me is the best way to describe you. Or would you like to try that again? Try it again. Try it again. That was a three words describe you.
Uh, not social first. I don't know. To be honest.
oh man describing you. Three words, three words describing you. Three words
Describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words describing you. Three words.
describing.
Three words. 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 Three words.
don't like that. I'm in this quarter. I don't like that. I'm in this quarter.
Sir, you sound like a fruit.
Smiling, so you're having a good time. What the hell do you have on your ceiling? Do you have like boogers on the ceiling or something?
What?
Yeah, what the heck is that? What? It was right behind you and you lost. Smiling. So you're having a good time. What
This one's a
is
little.
on the ceiling or something? Nah, it was communicate out live with association. And as we gonna be a spin move. Oh man, that's gonna be you. I can't get complete you. That is a cool. That is a cool dude. That is a cool dude. That is a cool. That is a cool dude. That is a cool dude. That is a cool. You see? Good time. Good times tonight. Jamming it out live, broadcasting to the prettiest good times. Good times. Oh man, I got there as well. Get connected. That's all that last one.
It's fine, yes.
Smiling, so you're having.
This one's a little dark.
We can talk. Perspective of I really go with what's going on.
What?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? What's going on, that thing?
Are you speaking English?
Hey,
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 I really
hey.
go with what's going
Hey.
on.
hey,
What?
Can you hear me now?
hey,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
hey, hey,
What's going on, that
Hey.
thing?
hey, hey, hey,
Are you speaking English?
Hey, I really go with what's going
Hey.
on.
hey,
What?
hey,
Can you hear me now?
hey,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can
hey,
you hear me?
hey,
当是阴
What's going on,
天
that
Hey.
thing?
hey, hey, hey,
Are you
今天
speaking
今
English?
天呢？
Hey, I really go with what's going on.
今天呢？
What?
hey,
Can you hear me now?
呢今天呢？
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can
hey,
you hear me?
呢今天呢？
hey,
What's going on, that thing?
hey, hey, hey,
Are you
Nothing
speaking
seems
English?
beautiful, only beings.
Hey,
On this
I
piece of
really
naivete
go
rests all
with what's
aesthetics.
going
It
on.
seems the first truth of
Hey.
aesthetics.
What?
hey,
Let us
hear
immediately
me
add
now?
a second. Nothing
Hey.
seems
Can you
ugly,
hear me?
however
Hey.
degenerate
Hey.
beings.
Hey.
The domain
Can
of
you hear me?
aesthetic judgment
Hey.
seems therewith defined.
hey,
What's going on, that
Hey.
thing?
hey, hey, hey,
Are you
Ultra
speaking
sola
English?
super omne mante
Hey,
mantemi
I really go with
felicita
what's going on.
AESTHETICA videtur
What?
veritas
Hey.
prima
Can you hear me now?
AESTHETICA
hey,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
venite
can hear you.
stati me
Hey.
dejus
Can
altera
you hear me?
nihil tamen
Hey.
degenera deformis
Going on,
videtur
that
animantibus ipsa iudicium videtur
Hey.
regione aesthetic regum
hey,
Are you
nos
speaking English?
Hey, I really go with what's going on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear
没
me?
有什么是美丽的，只有存在。在这片天真之上，承载着所有的美学。这似乎是美学的第一真理。 让我们立即加上它的第二个，论多么堕落的生物都不是丑陋的审美判断的领域似乎有此定义。
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Mom. Oh man. So connected. So sweet. Out in the community.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on, S-Thing? How you doing?
I'm doing really good. How about you?
Oh man, it's a splendid day. It's a splendid day.
Det ser ut
You're on
til
an
at verden er
episode.
vakkert.
You're on
Vår
an episode of
eksistens
Just
over denne
Saying.
uskylden bærer den alle estetikken,
Oh,
som ser
yes.
ut til å være den første
Live.
sannheten i estetikk. La oss umiddelbart legge til den andre. Uansett hvor forfeitet en skapning er, der den ikke stygg estetisk dommer synes å være
That's
definert
what
av
we're
dette.
doing.
Los.
What do we got going on today? Today, we're out in the community.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on, S-Thing? How you doing?
I'm doing.
Smiling, so it's the best fun to achieve, no matter what age we are. You should see what it looks like on my bar for the interweb. That's the stage to work with. Show is that full thrill.
What now?
Well, you should copy and paste that and repeat it. Please. Please jab it out. I come on this site just to get connected to community. Sometimes I get silly and sometimes I get called in. Choose no matter what age you are. You should see what it looks like on my bar for the interweb. That's the stage to work
似乎
with.
没有什么是美丽的，只有存在。它似乎是体现所有美学超越纯真的第一个美学真理。
Copy and paste.
我们马上加上第二条：动物在堕落，也不丑，似乎决定了审美判断的范围。Those.
See what is going on. Going on, S-Thing? Can you hear me now? Are you with me? You stared at you. That was a yeet. If I ever saw one. What is Ooh. Now, interrupt today. We're trying to get connected with people in the community. See what is going on. Going on, S-Thing? Can you hear me now? Are you with me? You stared at you. That was a yeet. If I ever saw one. What is What? 03-25. We're trying to get connected with people in the community.
What?
See what is going on. Going on, S-Thing? Can you hear me now? Are you with me? You stared at you. That was a yeet. If I ever saw one. What is Today we're trying to connected with people in the community. See what's going on. Going on, Essay? Hear me now. You with now with fire soul. What? Sanitario. Sanitario. Sanitario.
Bus es excelente, bis consortium sin sanagragene.问好二，问好 Kordai daru. Nada parece bello, solo seres. En esta pieza de ingenuidad descansa toda la estética, parece la primera verdad de la estética. Agreguemos inmediatamente su segundo. Nada parece feo por más degenerados que sean los seres. El dominio del juicio estético parece definido con ello. 2.
RadioFelici.org. 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 RadioFelici.org.
The first time I came on here was like last Monday.
What the first time?
Huh?
First time.
Yeah. And some guy's like, I bet you I can guess what state you're from. I'm like, what?
Really?
Yeah, and then he says, I bet you I can guess what city you're from. Zip code.
Oh, we're excited.
I'm like, no,
You already found out everything.
he doesn't know my address.
That's good. That's good. I don't know.
The zip code is like a big area.
That is true. That is true. True facts. True facts. True facts.
He was off by a number,
But it's still freaking. It's still freaking. It's like, it's still freaking. Down to by. You're off. Well, it was kind of like probably a fishing question where he's like, he's looking up where he's kind of excited. Because it's
I'm
like,
like, nope. Yeah, big setup too.
Yeah. Yo, but oh crap. I gotta ask Ray.
I'm 19.
Alright, good. Because I want to put it on air, and I
Okay.
but I gotta type it, and I type slow. So the liner is, luckily, radiopolice.org. Radio.
Yeah, really. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I gotta ask Ray.
What's going on, S.A.?
How old are you?
I'm 19.
Alright, good. You can do that.
Are you speaking
Because
English?
I want to put it on air.
It depends on if English
gotta
is
type
the language that you are
So the liner is,
understanding. It did. And as we go on, just get on thinking discuss with people in the community. What's going on? What's going on, S.A.?
I'm 19.
Alright, good.
Can you hear me
I
now?
want to put it on air, and I don't.
Oh, they need to have that on there. That would have been horrible. I was just somebody it looked like you were about to commit suicide.
It's radio police. I'm lucky radiopoliski.org radio for the prettiest ones is exactly right.
I don't understand.
That's
So
okay.
Galvan on the
Yeah.
You want me to say that again?
Well,
today
then, I
we're
want
jumping from
radio.
place to place. We've been here, we've been
I've
there.
heard of what?
SoundCloud
Getting connected to the community. Now we're jamming it out, dancing. This sounds like it's awesome. Yes,
Nada parece bello, solo seres. En esta pieza de ingenuidad descansa toda la estética, parece la primera verdad de la estética. Agreguemos inmediatamente su segundo. Nada parece feo por más degenerados que sean los seres. El dominio del juicio estético parece definido con ello.
Number one, I'm gonna do the sucker again. Number two, I'm gonna do the sucker again all the way up your ass. And number three, I'm gonna fuck your ass up like in a car crash. And number four, I'm gonna fuck you up like a goddamn accident. And number five, Jesus is the answer. This is the song that I'm going to rap on the start. Jesus is the answer.
Alright. I gotta ramble on.
I can see through. I can see past. I'm gonna wrap up this right now. And Jesus is the answer. I can see the time when Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. I was very grateful to hear about that stuff. Take it to me. It will make the best man be the hand. Tell all to God. Tell all to God.
And introducing,
we have you.
En esta pieza de ingenuidad descansa toda la estética, parece la primera verdad de la estética. Agreguemos inmediatamente su segundo. Nada parece feo por más degenerados que sean los seres. El dominio del arte estético parece definido. 2.
Number one, I'm gonna do this sucker again. Number two, I'm gonna do this sucker again all the way up your ass. And number three, I'm gonna fuck your ass up like a car crash. And number four, I'm gonna fuck you up like a goddamn accident. And number five, Jesus is the answer. This is the song that's gonna rap on the start. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer all your problems. We will save them. Guys, you will from heaven. I'm gonna wrap up this right now. And Jesus is the answer. From the time when Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, I was very grateful to hear about that stuff. Take it to me. It will make the best man be the hand. Tell all to God. Tell all to God with your mind. I'll say this again, so let me know. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Tell it like it is, guys. It was the real video. I told you the same way. I have to tell you the same way, so it is to be told. It's great for the change. It should be the change. I'm saying this again to let you know. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Tell it not the answer. Everywhere go, that is what you. What's that sound check? It will sound good for you, like it will sound good for me. Let this well me, and I will make it well for the nail. I'm saying this again, so let me know. Jesus is there, son. Jesus is there, son. Jesus is there, son. Jesus is there, son. Jesus
How much, baby?
How much for cock and balls?
Cock and balls is mini yen. Mini yen. I like that. Go ahead,
What's your ethnicity? What's your ethnicity?
I like that. Mini yen. Mini yen. Mini yen. Mini yen. I like that. 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 Mini yen. I like that.
What's your ethnicity?
I like that. Go ahead.
What's your You smart.
I'm right there.
We want to see your fucking
No,
balls.
what did I say?
Hello?
Hey, what are you guys up to? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, he's smart.
I'm right there.
We want to see your talking balls.
You want to see my cock and balls?
Yeah.
You have to pay a fee to see my cock and balls.
Okay.
You have to pay a fee to see my cock and balls. You want to see my cock and balls?
How much?
Baby.
How much for talking balls?
Cock and balls is many yen.
You ain't mixed that cement?
I like that. Go ahead.
What's your ethnicity?
I am a human. I'm a human. What's going on, SA?
Hello?
Yeah, what are you guys up to? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, he's like,
I'm right there.
we want to see your talking balls.
You want to see my talking balls?
Yeah.
That's what I blasphemer. That's my talking balls.
Okay.
That's what I blasphemer. That's what I blasphemer.
How much for talking balls?
Cock and balls is many yen. Many yen. I like that. Go ahead.
What's your ethnicity?
I am a human. I'm a human. Hold on.
What's your ethnicity? It's like he's on his off.
I see.
Imagine having arms.
Imagine having arms. Yeah. Imagine having arms. You want to see my arms? You have to pay us. I do like that guitar in the back.
Whatever. Man, come in their mouth. Grab my back of the neck. Go for it. You're gonna fucking die. Go for it. That's right. You're gonna lose your fucking mind. Smack package. Something you do. But life is a dream for you that has a semantic valley of a jelly bean. They call it a brain. Freedom, America. Thinking you're gonna con us out of our country? Why? Thinking you're gonna con us? You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me on? Come on, get me, you motherfucker. You were gonna take me. They called it. Nothing ever came out of dead testicles. Nothing ever came out of dead testicles. Nothing ever came. Who next ever? 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 Little mouse-minded motherfucker. I would like you to emergency call, please. And get you off your ass, You brainwash yourself, you mother idiot. 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 You brainwash yourself, you motherfucking stupid cocksuckers. Because 'cause you never seem to pull it off. And eat it because you're on repeat, motherfucker that just started backwards. And eat it because you're on repeat, motherfucker that just started backwards. And eat it because you're on repeat. You're trying to get in on this fucking thing. You ain't no star, asshole. You're trying to get in on this fucking thing. You ain't no star, asshole. You're trying to get in on this fucking thing. You ain't no star, asshole. You're trying to get in on this fucking thing.
A Strange Life, Nikola Tesla, Chapter 5. As I review the events of my past life, I realize how subtle are the influences that shape our destinies. An incident in my youth may serve to illustrate. One winter's day, I managed to climb a steep mountain in company with other boys. The snow was quite deep, and a warm southern wind made it just suitable for our purpose. We amused ourselves by throwing balls which could roll down a certain distance, gathering more or less snow. We tried to outdo one another in this sport. Suddenly, the ball was seen to go beyond the limit, swelling to enormous proportions until it became as big as a house and plunged thundering into the valley below with a force that made the ground tremble. I looked on spellbound, incapable of understanding what had happened. For weeks afterwards, the picture of the avalanche was before my eyes, and I wondered how anything so small grew to such an immense size. Ever since that time, the magnification of feeble actions fascinated me, and when, years later, I took up the experimental study of mechanical and electrical resonance, I was keenly interested from the very start. Possibly, had it not been for the early powerful impression, I might not have followed up the little spark I obtained with my coil and never developed my best invention, the true history of which I will tell. Many technical men, very able in their special departments, but dominated by a pedantic spirit and nearsighted, have asserted that, excepting the induction motor, I have given the world little of practical use. This is a grievous mistake. A new idea must not be judged by its immediate results. My alternating system of power transmission came at a psychological moment as a long-sought answer to pressing industrial questions, and although considerable resistance had to be overcome and opposing interests reconciled, as usual, the commercial introduction could not be long delayed. Now, compare this situation with that confronting my turbines, for example. One should think that so simple and beautiful an invention, possessing many features of an ideal motor, should be adopted at once, and undoubtedly it would under similar conditions. But the prospective effect of the rotating field was not to render worthless existing machinery. On the contrary, It was to give it additional value. The system lent itself to new enterprise as well as to the improvement of the old. My turbine is an advance of a character entirely different. It is a radical departure in the sense that its success would mean the abandonment of antiquated types of prime movers on which billions of dollars have been spent. Under such circumstances, the progress must need be slow, and perhaps the greatest impediment is encountered in the prejudicial opinions created in the minds of experts by organized opposition. Only the other day, I had a disheartening experience when I met my friend and former assistant, Charles F. Scott, now professor of electric engineering at Yale. I had not seen him for a long time and was glad to have an opportunity for a little chat at my office. Our conversation, naturally enough, drifted onto my turbine, and I became heated to a high degree. Scott, I exclaimed, carried away by the vision of a glorious future. My turbine will scrap all the heat engines in the world. Scott stroked his chin and looked away thoughtfully, as though making a mental calculation. That will make quite a pile of scrap, he said, and left without another word. These and other inventions of mine, however, were nothing more than steps forward in a certain direction. In evolving them, I simply followed the inborn instinct to improve the present devices without any special thought of our far more imperative necessities. The magnifying transmitter was the product of labors extending through years, having for the chief object the solution of problems which are infinitely more important to mankind than mere industrial development. If my memory serves me right, it was in November 1890 that I performed a laboratory experiment which was one of the most extraordinary and spectacular ever recorded in the annal of science. In investigating the behavior of high-frequency currents, I had satisfied myself that an electric field of sufficient intensity could be produced in a room to light up the electrolysis vacuum tubes. Accordingly, a transformer was built to test the theory, and the first trial proved a marvelous success. It is difficult to appreciate what those strange phenomena meant at the time. We crave for new sensations, but soon become indifferent to them. The wonders of yesterday are today common occurrences. When my tubes were first publicly exhibited, they were viewed with amazement impossible to describe. From all parts of the world, I received urgent invitations and numerous honors and other flattering inducements were offered to me, which I declined. But in 1892, the demand became irresistible, and I went to London, where I delivered a lecture before the Institution of Electrical Engineers. It has been my intention to leave immediately for Paris in compliance with a similar obligation, but Sir James Dewar insisted on my appearing before the Royal Institution. I was a man of firm resolve, but succumbed easily to the forceful arguments of the great Scotchman. He pushed me into a chair and poured out half a glass of wonderful brown fluid which sparkled in all sorts of iridescent colors and tasted like nectar. "Now," said he, "you are sitting in Faraday's chair, and you are enjoying whiskey he used to drink," which did not interest me very much, as I had altered my opinion concerning strong drink. The next evening, I have a demonstration before the Royal Institution, at the termination of which Lord Raleigh addressed the audience, and his generous words gave me the first start in these endeavors. I fled from London, and later from Paris, to escape favors showered upon me, and journeyed to my home, where I passed through a most painful ordeal and illness. Upon regaining my health, I began to formulate plans for the resumption of work in America. Up to that time, I never realized that I possessed any particular gift of discovery, but Lord Raleigh, who I always considered as an ideal man of science, had said so, and if that was the case, I felt that I should concentrate on some big idea. At this time, as many other times in the past, my thoughts turned towards my mother's teaching. The gift of mental power comes from God, divine being, and if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power. My mother had taught me to seek all truth in the Bible. Therefore, I devoted the next few months to the study of this work. One day, as I was roaming the mountains, I sought shelter from an approaching storm. The sky became overhung with heavy clouds, but somehow the rain was delayed until, all of a sudden, there was a lightning flash, and after a few moments, a deluge. This observation set me thinking. It was manifest that the two phenomena were closely related as cause and effect, and a little reflection led me to the conclusion that the electrical energy involved in the precipitation of the water was inconsiderable, the function of the lightning being much more like that of a sensitive trigger. Here was the stupendous possibility of achievement. If we could produce electric effects of the required quality, this whole planet and the conditions of existence on it could be transformed. The sun raises the water of the oceans, and winds drive it to distant regions where it remains in a state of most delicate balance.
So you can check out all this stuff on Radio
When and wherever desired,
Again,
this mighty life-sustaining stream could be at will controlled. We could irrigate arid deserts, create lakes and rivers, and provide motive power in unlimited amounts. This would be the most effective way of harnessing the sun to the uses of man. The consummation depended on our ability to develop electric forces of the order of those in nature. It seemed a hopeless undertaking, but I made up my mind to try it, and immediately on my return to the United States in the summer of 1892, after a short visit to my friends in Watford, England, work was begun, which was to me all the more attractive because a means of the same kind was necessary for the successful transmission of energy without wires. At this time, I made a further careful study of the Bible and discovered the key in Revelation. The first gratifying result was obtained in the spring of the succeeding year, when I reached a tension of about 100 million volts with my conical coil, which I figured was the voltage of a flash of lightning. Steady progress was made until the destruction of my laboratory by fire in 1895, as may be judged from an article by T.C. Martin, which appeared in the April number of the Century magazine. This calamity set me back in many ways, and most of that year had been devoted to planning and reconstruction. the circumstances permitted, I returned to the task. Although I knew that higher electric motive forces were attainable with apparatus of larger dimensions, I had an instinctive perception that the object could be accomplished by the proper design of a comparatively small and compact transformer. In carrying on tests with a secondary in the form of a flat spiral, as illustrated in my patents, the absence of streamers surprised me, and it was not long before I discovered that this way was due to the position of the turns and their manual action. Profiting from this observation, I resorted to the use of a high-tension conductor with turns of considerable diameter, sufficiently separated to keep down the distributed capacity, while at the same time preventing undue accumulation of the charge at any point. The application of this principle enabled me to produce pressures of over 100 million volts, which was about the limit obtainable without the risk of accident. A photograph of my transmitter built in my laboratory on Houston Street was published in the Electrical Review of November 1898. In order to advance further along this line, I had to go into the open, and in the spring of 1899, having completed preparations for the erection of a wireless plant, I went to Colorado, where I remained for more than 1 year. Here, I introduced other improvements and refinements which made it possible to generate currents of
Walang tila maganda, mga nilalang lamang, sa piraso ng walang muwang na nakasalalay sa lahat ng mga estetika, tila ang unang katotohanan ng mga aesthetics. Agad nating idagdag ang pangalawa nito. Walang tila pangit gayon paman degenerate na mga nilalang ang domain ng paghuhusga sa aesthetic ay tila tinukoy. 2.
previous occasion. I will be quite explicit on the subject of my magnifying transformer, so that it will be clearly understood. In the first place, it is a resonant transformer. There, in which the parts charged to a high potential are of considerable area and arranged in space along ideal and moving surfaces of very large rate of curvature and at proper distances from one another, thereby ensuring a small electric surface density everywhere, so that no leak can occur even if the conductor is bare. It is suitable for any frequency, from a few to many thousands of cycles per second, that can be used in the production of currents of tremendous volume and moderate pressure, or of smaller amperage and immense electromotive force. The maximum electric tension is merely dependent on the curvature of the surfaces on which the charge elements are situated in the area of the latter. Judging from my past experience, there is no limit to the possible voltage developed. Any amount is practicable. On the other hand, currents of many thousands of amperes may be obtained in the antenna. A plant of but very modern dimensions is required for such performances. Theoretically, a terminal of less than 90 20 feet in diameter is sufficient to develop an electromotive force of that magnitude, while for a 10 occurrence of from 2,000 to 4,000 amperes, not be larger than a 30 diameter. In a more restricted meaning, this wireless transmitter is one in which the Hertz wave radiation is an entirely negligible quantity as compared with the whole energy, under which condition the damping factor is extremely small and an enormous charge is stored in the elevated capacity. Such a circuit may then be excited with impulses of any kind.
Next slide Moini, net essence of juristet Nordic-Typeres alle Ästhetika, det Leiti erste Wahrheit von Ästhetika. Laat ons dadelijk sy tweede byvoeg. Next slide lere hoe ons aardwesens nie die domein van esthetiese oordeel lyk daarmee ons stryd. Dos.
Is accurately proportioned to fit the globe and its electrical constants and properties, by virtue of which design it becomes highly efficient and effective in the wireless transmission of energy. Distance is then absolutely eliminated, there being no diminution in the intensity of transmitted impulses. It is even possible to make the actions increase with the distance from the plane according to an exact mathematical law. This invention was one of a number comprised in the world system of wireless transmission, which I undertook to commercialize on my return to New York in 1900. As to the immediate purposes of my enterprise,
where you're pointing from again, so we're broadcasting live.
The world system has resulted from a combination of several original discoveries made by the inventor in the course of a long continuous research and experimentation. It makes possible not only the instantaneous and precise wireless transmission of any kind of signals, messages, or characters to all parts of the world, but also the interconnection of the existing telegraph, telephone, and other signal stations without any change in their present equipment. By its means, for instance, the telephone subscriber may call up and talk to any other subscriber on Earth. An inexpensive receiver, not bigger than a watch, will enable to listen anywhere on land or at sea to a speech delivered or music played in some other place, however distant. These examples are cited merely to give an idea of the possibilities of this great scientific advance, which annihilates distance and makes that perfect natural conductor for all purposes which human ingenuity has found more wires. One far-reaching result of this is that any device capable of being operated through wires and the distance obviously restricted can likewise be actuated without artificial conductors with the same facility and accuracy at distances to which there are no limits other than those imposed by the physical dimensions of the Earth.
You're an indigenous
Thus, not only will entirely new fields for commercial exploitation be opened up by this ideal method of transmission, but the old ones vastly extended. The world system is based on the application of the following important inventions and discoveries. One, the Tesla transformer.
You can say you're indigenous.
This apparatus is in the production of electrical vibrations as revolutionary as gunpowder was in water currents many times stronger than any ever generated in the usual ways, and sparks 100 feet long have been produced by the inventor with an instrument of this kind. The magnifying transmitter. This is Tesla's best invention, peculiar transformer specially adapted to excite the Earth, which is the transmission of electrical energy when the telescope is in astronomical observation. By the use of this marvelous device, he has already set up electrical movements of greater intensity than those of lightning, and amassed a current sufficient to light more than 200 incandescent lamps around the Earth. 3. The Tesla wireless system. The system comprises a number of improvements and is the only means known for transmitting economically electrical energy to a distance without wires. Careful tests and measurements in connection with an experimental station of great activity erected by the inventor in Colorado have demonstrated that power in any desired amount can be conveyed clear across the globe if necessary, with a loss not exceeding 50%. 4. The art of individualization. This invention of Tesla is to primitive tuning what refined languages to unarticulated expression. It makes possible the transmission of signals or messages absolutely secret and exclusive both in the active and passive aspect. That is, non-interfering as well as non-interferable. Each signal is like an individual unmistakable identity, and there is virtually no limit to the number of stations or instruments which can be simultaneously operated without the slightest mutual disturbance. 5. The terrestrial stationary waves. This wonderful discovery, not clearly explained, means that the Earth is responsive to electrical vibrations of definite pitch, just as a tuning fork to certain waves of sound. These particular electrical vibrations, capable of powerfully exciting the globe, lend themselves to innumerable uses of great importance commercially and in many other respects. The first world system power plant can be put in operation in 9 months. With this power plant, it will be practicable to attain electrical activities up to 10 million horsepower and is designed to serve for as many technical achievements as possible without due expense. Among these are the following. 1. The interconnection of existing telegraph exchanges or offices all over the world. 2. The establishment of secret and non-interferable government telegraph service. 3. The interconnection of all present telephone exchanges or offices around the globe. 4. The universal distribution of general news by telegraph or telephone in conjunction with the press. 5. The establishment of such a world system of intelligence transmission for exclusive private use. 6. The interconnection and operation of all stock tickers of the world. 7. The establishment of a world system of musical distribution, etc. 8. The universal registration of time by cheap clocks indicating the hour with astronomical precision and requiring no attention whatsoever. 9. The world transmission of typed or handwritten characters, letters, checks, etc. 10. The establishment of a universal marine service, enabling the navigators of all ships to steer perfectly without compass to determine the exact location, hour, and speak to prevent collisions and disasters, etc. 11. The inauguration of a system of world printing on land and sea. 12. The world reproduction of photographic pictures of all kinds of drawings or records. I also propose to make demonstrations in the wireless transmission of power on a small scale, but sufficient to carry conviction. Besides these, I've referred to other incomparably more important applications of my discoveries, which will be disclosed at some future date. A plant was built on Long Island, with a tower 187 feet high, having a spherical terminal of about 68 feet in diameter. These dimensions were adequate for the transmission of virtually any amount of energy. Originally, only from 200 to 300 kilowatts were provided, but I intended to employ later several thousand horsepower. The transmitter was to emit a wave complex of special characteristics, and I had devised a unique method of telephonic control of any amount of energy. The tower was destroyed 2 years ago, 1917, but my projects are being developed, and another one, improved in some features, will be constructed. On this occasion, I would contradict the widely circulated report that the structure was demolished by the government, which, owing to war conditions, might have created prejudice in the minds of those who may not know that the papers, which 30 years ago conferred upon me the honor of American citizenship, are always kept in a safe, while my orders, diplomas, degrees, gold medals, and any other distinctions are packed away in old trunks. If this report had a foundation, I would have been refunded a large sum of money which I expended in the construction of the tower. On the contrary, it was in the interest of the government to preserve it, particularly as it would have been made possible to mention just one valuable result, the location of a submarine in any part of the world. My plant, services, and all my improvements have always been at the disposal of the officials, and ever since the outbreak of the European conflict, I've been working at sacrifice on several inventions of mine relating to aerial navigation, ship propulsion, and wireless transmission, which are of the greatest importance to the country. Those who are well informed know that my ideas have revolutionized the industries of the United States, and I am not aware of the lives of an inventor who has been, in this respect, as fortunate as myself, especially as regards the use of his improvements in the war. I have refrained from publicly expressing myself on this subject before, as it seemed improper to dwell on the personal matters while all the world was in dire trouble. I would add further, in view of the various rumors which have reached me, that Mr. J. Pierpont Morgan did not interest himself with me in a business way, but in the same spirit in which he had assisted many other pioneers. He carried out his generous promise to the letter, and it would have been the most unreasonable to expect from him anything more. He had the highest regard for my attainments and gave me every evidence of his complete faith in my ability to ultimately achieve what I had set out to do. I am unwilling to accord to some small-minded and jealous individuals the satisfaction of having thwarted my efforts. These men are to me nothing more than microbes of a nasty disease. My project was retarded by laws of nature. The world was not prepared for it. It was far too ahead of time, but the same laws will prevail in the end and make it a triumphal success.
The Strange Life of Nikola Tesla, Chapter 6. No subject to which I have ever devoted myself is called for such a concentration of mind, and strain to so dangerous a degree. The finest fibers of my brain, and the systems of which the magnifying transmitter is the foundation. I put all the intensity and vigor of youth in the development of the rotating field discoveries, but those early labors were of a different character. Although strenuous in the extreme, they did not involve that keen and exhausting discernment which had to be exercised in attacking the many problems of the wireless. Despite my rare physical endurance at that period, the abused nerves finally rebelled, and I suffered a complete collapse, just as the consummation of the long and difficult task was almost in sight. Without doubt, I would have paid a greater penalty later. Very likely my career would have been prematurely terminated had not Providence equipped me with a safety device, which seemed to improve with advancing years and unfailingly comes to play when my forces are at an end. So long as it operates, I am safe from danger due to overwork, which threatens other inventors. And incidentally, I need no vacations which are indispensable to most people. When I am all but used up, I simply do as the darkies, who naturally fall asleep while white folks worry. To venture a theory out of my sphere, the body probably accumulates little by little a definite quantity of some toxic agent, and I sink into a nearly lethargic state which lasts half an hour to the minute. Upon awakening, I have the sensation as though the events immediately preceding it occurred very long ago, and if I attempt to continue the interrupted train of thought, I feel veritable nausea. Involuntarily, I then turn to other tasks, and am surprised at the freshness of the mind and ease with which I overcome obstacles that have baffled me before. After weeks or months, my passion for the temporarily abandoned invention returns, and I invariably find answers to all the vexing questions with scarcely any effort. In this connection, I will tell of an extraordinary experience, which may be of interest to students of psychology. I had produced a striking phenomenon with my grounded transmitter and was endeavoring to ascertain its true significance in relation to the currents propagated through the earth. It seemed a hopeless undertaking, and for more than a year I worked unremittingly, but in vain. This profound study so entirely absorbed me that I became forgetful of everything else, even of my undermined health. At last, as I was at the point of breaking down, nature applied the preservative, inducing people to sleep. Regaining my senses, I realized with consternation that I was unable to visualize scenes from my life, except those of infancy, the very first ones that had entered my consciousness. Curiously enough, these appeared before my vision with startling distinctness and afforded me welcome relief. Night after night, when retiring, I would think of them, and more of my previous existence was revealed. The image of my mother was always the principal figure in the spectacle that slowly unfolded, and a consuming desire to see her again gradually took possession of me. This feeling grew so strong that I resolved to drop all work and satisfy my longing, but I found it too hard to break away from the laboratory, and several months elapsed during which I had succeeded in reviving all the impressions of my past life, up to the spring of 1892. In the next picture that came out of the mist of oblivion, I saw myself at the Hotel de la Paix in Paris, just coming to from one of my peculiar sleeping spells, which had been caused by prolonged exertion of the brain. Imagine the pain and distress I felt when it flashed upon my mind that a dispatch was handed to me at that very moment, bearing the sad news that my mother was dying. I remembered how I made the long journey home without an hour of rest, and how she passed away after weeks of agony. It was especially remarkable that during all this period of partially obliterated memory, I was fully alive to everything touching on the subject of my research. I could recall the smallest detail and the least insignificant observations in my experiments, and even recite pages of text and complex mathematical formulae. My belief is firm in a law of compensation. The true rewards are ever in proportion to the labor and sacrifices made. This is one of the reasons why I feel certain that of all my inventions, the magnifying transmitter will prove most important and valuable to future generations. I am prompted to this prediction, not so much by thoughts of the commercial and industrial revolution which it will surely bring about, but of the humanitarian consequences of the many achievements it makes possible. Considerations of mere utility weigh little in the balance against the higher benefits of civilization. We are confronted with portentous problems which cannot be solved just by providing for our material existence, however abundantly. On the contrary, progress in this direction is fraught with hazards and perils not less menacing than those born from want and suffering. If we were to release the energy of atoms or discover some other way of developing cheap and unlimited power at any point on the globe, this accomplishment, instead of being a blessing, might bring disaster to mankind in giving rise to dissension and anarchy, which would ultimately result in the enthronement of the hated regime of force. The greatest good will come from the technical improvements tending to unification and harmony, and my wireless transmitter is preeminently such. By its means, the human voice and likeness will be reproduced everywhere, and factories driven from thousands of miles away by waterfalls furnish power. Aerial machines will be propelled around the Earth without a stop, and the sun's energy controlled to create lakes and rivers for motive purposes, and the transformation of arid deserts into fertile land. Its introduction for telegraphic, telephonic, and similar uses will automatically cut out the static and all other interferences which at present impose narrow limits to the application of the wireless. This is a timely topic on which a few words might not be amiss. During the past decade, a number of people have arrogantly claimed that they had succeeded in doing away with this impediment. I have carefully examined all of the arrangements described and tested most of them long before they were publicly disclosed, but the finding was uniformly negative. Recent official statements from the U.S. Navy may, perhaps, have taught some beguilable news editors how to appraise these announcements at their real worth. As a rule, the attempts are based on theories so fallacious that whenever they come to my notice, I can not help thinking in a light vein. Quite recently, a new discovery was heralded with a deafening flourish of trumpets, but it proved another case of a mountain bringing forth a mouse. This reminds me of an exciting incident which took place a year ago when I was conducting experiments in currents of high frequency. Steve Brody had just jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge. The feat has been vulgarized since by imitators, but the first report electrified New York City. I was very impressionable then and frequently spoke of the daring printer. On a hot afternoon, I felt the necessity of refreshing myself and stepped into one of the popular 30,000 institutions in this great city, where a delicious 12% beverage was served, which can now be had only by making a trip to the poor and devastated countries in Europe. The attendance was large and not over-distinguished, and the matter was discussed, which gave me an admirable opening for the careless remark, "This is what I said when I jumped off the bridge." No sooner had I uttered these words than I felt like the companion of Timothyns in the poem of Schiller. In an instant there was pandemonium, and a dozen voices cried, "It is Brody!" I threw a quarter on the counter and bolted for the door, but the crowd was at my heels with yells, "Stop, Steve!" which must have been misunderstood, for many persons tried to hold me up as I ran frantically for my haven of refuge. By darting around corners, I fortunately managed, through the medium of fire escape, to reach the laboratory where I threw off my coat, camouflaged myself as a hard-working blacksmith, and started the forge. But these precautions proved unnecessary, as I had eluded my pursuers. For many years afterward, at night, when imagination turns into specters, the trifling troubles of the day, I often thought, as I tossed on the bed, what my fate would have been had the mob caught me and found out that I was not Steve Brody. Now, the engineer who lately gave an account before a technical body of a novel remedy against static based on a heretofore unknown law of nature seems to have been as reckless as myself when he contended that these disturbances propagate up and down, while those of a transmitter proceed along the Earth. It would mean that a condenser as this globe, with its gaseous envelope, could be charged and discharged in a manner quite contrary to the fundamental teachings propounded in every elemental textbook of physics. Such a supposition would have been condemned as erroneous, even in Franklin's time, for the facts bearing on this were then well known, and the identity between atmospheric electricity and that developed by machines was fully established. Obviously, natural and artificial disturbances propagate through the earth and the air in exactly the same way, and both set up electromotive forces in horizontal as well as vertical sense. The truth is this: in the air, the potential increases at the rate of about 50 volts per foot of elevation, according to which may be a difference of pressure amounting to 20 or even 40,000 volts between the upper and lower ends of the antenna. The masses of the charged atmosphere are constantly in motion and give up electricity to the conductor, not continuously, but rather disruptively, this producing a grinding noise in a sensitive telephonic receiver. The higher the terminal and the greater the space encompassed by the wires, the more pronounced is the effect, but it must be understood that it is purely local and has little to do with the real trouble. In 1900, while perfecting my wireless system, one form of apparatus comprised 4 antennae. These were carefully calibrated in the same frequency and connected in multiple with the object of magnifying the action and receiving from any direction. When I desired to ascertain the origin of the transmitted impulse, each diagonally simulated pair was put in series with a primary coil energizing the detector circuit. In the former case, the sound was loud in the telephone. In the latter, it ceased as expected, the 2 antennae neutralizing each other. But the true statics manifested themselves in both instances. I had to devise special preventives embodying different principles. By employing receivers connected to 2 points of the ground, as suggested by me long ago, this trouble caused by the charged air, which is very serious in the structures it's now built, is nullified, and besides, the liability of all kinds of interference is reduced to about 1/2 because of the directional character of the circuit. This was perfectly self-evident, but came as a revelation to some simple-minded wireless folks, whose experience was confined to forms of apparatus that could have been improved with an axe. If it were true that strays performed such antics, it would be easy to get rid of them by receiving without aerials. But as a matter of fact, a wire buried in the ground, which, conforming to this view, should be absolutely immune, is more susceptible to certain extraneous impulses than one placed vertically in the air. To state it fairly, a slight progress has been made, but not by virtue of any particular method or device. It was achieved simply by discerning the enormous structures which are bad enough for transmission but wholly unsuitable for reception, and adopting a more appropriate type of receiver. As I have said before, to dispose of this difficulty for good, a radical change must be made in the system, and the sooner this is done, the better. It would be calamitous indeed if at this time, when the artist and the vast majority, not accepting even experts, have no conception of its ultimate possibilities, a measure would be rushed through the legislature, making it a government monopoly. This was proposed a few weeks ago by Secretary Daniels, and no doubt that distinguished official has made his appeal to the Senate and House of Representatives with sincere conviction. But universal evidence unmistakably shows that the best results are always obtained in healthful commercial competition. There are, however, exceptional reasons why wireless should be given the fullest freedom of development. In the first place, it offers prospects immeasurably greater and more vital to the betterment of human life than any other invention or discovery in the history of man. Then again, it must be understood that this wonderful art has been in its entirety evolved here and can be called American, with more right and propriety than the telephone, the incandescent lamp, or the aeroplane. Enterprising press agents and stock jobbers have been so successful in spreading misinformation that even so excellent a periodical as the Scientific American accords the chief credit to a foreign country. The Germans, of course, gave us the Hertz waves, and the Russian, English, French, and Italian experts were quick in using them for signaling purposes. It was an obvious application of the new agent and accomplished with the old classical and unimproved induction coil, scarcely anything more than another kind of heliography. The radius of transmission was very limited, the result attained of little value, and the Hertz oscillations as a means for conveying intelligence could have been advantageously replaced by sound waves, which I advocated in 1891. Moreover, all of these attempts were made 3 years after the basic principles of the wireless system, which is universally employed today, and its potential instrumentalities have been clearly described and developed in America. No trace of those Hertzian appliances and methods remain today. We have proceeded in the very opposite direction, and what has been done is the product of the brains and efforts of citizens of this country. The fundamental patents have expired, and the opportunities are open to all. The chief argument of the Secretary is based on interference. According to his statement reported in the New York Herald of July 29, signals from a powerful station could be intercepted in every village in the world. In view of this fact, which was demonstrated in my experiments in 1900, it would be of little use to impose restrictions in the United States. As throwing light on this point, I may mention that only recently an odd-looking gentleman called on me, the object of enlisting my services in the construction of world transmitters in some distant land. "We have no money," he said, "but carloads of solid gold, and we will give you a liberal amount." I told him that I wanted to see first what will be done with my inventions in America, and this ended the interview. But I am satisfied that some dark forces are at work, and as time goes on, the maintenance of continuous communication will be rendered more difficult. The only remedy is a system immune against interruption. It has been perfected, it exists, and all that is necessary is to put it in operation. The terrible conflict is still uppermost in the mind, and perhaps the greatest importance will be attached to the magnifying transmitter as a machine for attack and defense, more particularly in connection with teletomatics. This invention is a logical outcome of observations begun in my boyhood and continued throughout my life. When the first results were published, the Electrical Review stated editorially that it would become one of the most potent factors in the advance of civilization of mankind. The time is not distant when this prediction will be fulfilled. In 1898 and 1900, it was offered by me to the government. It might have been adopted were I one of those who would go to Alexander's shepherd when they won a favor from Alexander. At that time, I really thought that it would abolish war because of its unlimited destructiveness and exclusion of the personal element of combat. But while I have not lost faith in its potentialities, my views have changed since. War cannot be avoided until the physical cause for its recurrence is removed. And this, in the last analysis, is the vast extent of the planet on which we live. Only through annihilation of distances in every respect, as the conveyance of intelligence, transport of passengers and supplies, and transmission of energy, will conditions be brought about someday, ensuring permanency of friendly relations. What we want now most is closer contact and better understanding between individuals and communities all over the earth, and the elimination of that fanatic devotion to exalted ideals of national egoism and pride, which is always prone to plunge the world into primeval barbarism and strife. No league or parliamentary act of any kind will ever prevent such a calamity. These are only new devices for putting the weak at the mercy of the strong. I have expressed myself in this regard 14 years ago when a combination of a few leading governments, a sort of holy alliance, was advocated by the late Andrew Carnegie, who may be fairly considered as the father of this idea, having given it more publicity and impetus than anybody else prior to the
Niks like mooi net wesens op hierdie stuk naiviteit berus alle estetika. Dit lyk die eerste waarheid van estetika. Laat ons dadelik sy tweede byvoeg. Niks lyk lelik hoe ontaard wesens nie die domein van estetiese oordeel lyk daarmee omskryf. Dos.
As I view the world of today in the light of the gigantic struggle we have witnessed, I am filled with conviction that the interest of humanity will be best served if the United States remain true to its traditions, true to God whom it pretends to believe, and kept out of entangling alliances. Situated as it is, geographically remote from the theaters of impending conflicts, without incentive to territorial aggrandizement, with inexhaustible resources and immense population thoroughly imbued with the spirit of liberty and right, this country is placed in a unique and privileged position. It is thus able to exert independently its colossal strength and moral force to the benefit of all, more judiciously and effectively than as a member of a league. I have dwelt on the circumstances in my early life and told of an affliction which compelled me to unremitting exercise of imagination.
Rien ne semble beau, seuls les êtres. Sur ce morceau de naïveté repose toute l'esthétique. Il semble la première vérité de l'esthétique. Ajoutons tout de suite son second. Rien ne semble laid, pourtant les êtres dégénérés. Le domaine du jugement esthétique semble ainsi défini. Do.
To such a degree delicate and elusive that it is hard for the average person to grasp this fact. Yet nothing is more convincing than trained investigators of the mechanistic theory of life, which has been in a measure understood and propounded by Descartes 100 years ago. In his time, many important functions of our organisms were observed, and especially doubt in regard to this view, on which many works have been published. One of its ablest and most eloquent exponents is perhaps Felix Ladante, formerly assistant to Pasteur. Professor Jacques Loeb has performed remarkable experiments in heliotropism, clearly establishing the controlling power of light in lower forms of organisms, and his latest book, Forced Movements, is revelatory. But while men of science accept this theory simply as any other book that is recognized, to me it is a truth which I hourly demonstrate by every act and thought of mine. The consciousness of the external impression prompting me to any kind of exertion, mental or physical, is ever present in my mind. Only on very rare occasions when I was in a state of exceptional concentration have I found difficulty in locating the original impulse. The by far greater number of human beings are never aware of what is passing around and within them, and millions fall victims of disease and die prematurely just on this account. The commonest everyday occurrences appear to them mysterious and inexplicable. One may feel a sudden wave of sadness and rack his brain for explanation, when he might have noticed that it was caused by a cloud cutting off the rays of the sun. He may see the image of a friend dear to him under conditions which he construes as very peculiar, when only shortly before he has passed him in the street or seen his photograph somewhere. When he loses a collar button, he fusses and swears for an hour, being unable to visualize his previous actions and locate the object directly. Efficient observation is merely a form of ignorance, and responsible for the many morbid notions and foolish ideas prevailing. There is not more than 1 out of every 10 persons who does not believe in telepathy and other psychic manifestations, spiritualism, and communion with the dead, and who would refuse to listen to alone unremoved secrets. Just to illustrate how deeply rooted this tendency has become, even among the clear-headed American population, I may mention the inconsequences. Shortly before the war, when the exhibition of my turbine in the city elicited widespread comment in the technical papers, I anticipated that there would be a scramble among manufacturers to get hold of the invention, and I had particular designs on that man from Detroit who has an uncanny faculty for accumulating millions. So confident was I that he would turn up someday that I declared this as certain to my secretary and assistants. Sure enough, one fine morning a body of engineers from the Ford Motor Company presented themselves with a request to discuss with me an important project. Didn't I tell you? I remarked triumphantly to my employees, and one of them said, "You are amazing, Mr. Tesla. Everything comes out exactly as you predict." As soon as these hard-headed men were seated, I of course immediately began to install the wonderful features of my turbine, when the spokesman interrupted me and said, "We know all about this, but we are on a special errand. We have formed a psychological society for the investigation of psychic phenomena, and we want you to join us in this undertaking." I suppose these engineers never knew how near they came to making the fire out of my office. Ever since I was told by some of the greatest men of the time, leaders in science whose names are immortal, that I am possessed of an unusual mind, I bent all my thinking faculties on the solution of great problems regardless of sacrifice. For many years I endeavored to solve the enigma of death, watching eagerly for every kind of spiritual indication. But only once in the course of my existence have I had an experience which momentarily impressed me as supernatural. It was at the time of my mother's death. I had become completely exhausted by being long vigilance. One night I was carried to a building about 2 blocks from where I was. As I lay helpless there, I thought that if my mother died while I was waiting for that night, she would surely give me a sign. 2 or 3 months before, I was in London accompanied by this spiritualist who discussed things under the most of these thoughts. I might not have paid attention to other men, but was susceptible to his arguments and his chemical work on the radiant matter, which I had read as a student that made me embrace the electrical career. that the conditions for ability beyond was favorable. My mother particularly excelling the powers of intuition. During the whole night, every side of my life, I was praying and expecting that something happened. So early in the morning, I fell asleep before perhaps swoon. Saw a cloud appearing, shadow figures. One of them being loving, gradually ascending the images of my mother. The appearance slowly crossed the great branch. I was awakened by his kindness and calm. That instant of certitude which no words could express came upon me that my mother had just. And that was true. I was unable to understand the tremendous way that made and wrote a letter to Sir William Crookes while still under the domination of oppression or bodily health. When I recovered, I sought for a long time the external cause of strange manifestation. My great relief, I succeeded after many months of I had seen the painting of a celebrated artist representing Alec the form of a cloud. A group of angels seemed to actually float in the air, and this struck me forcefully. It was exactly the same that appeared in my dream, with the exception of my mother's language. The music came from the choir in the church nearby, and the early mass each morning, explaining everything satisfactorily in conformity with scientific facts. This occurred long ago, and I have never had the faintest reason since to change my views on psychical and spiritual phenomena for which there is no foundation. The belief in these is the natural outgrowth of intellectual development. Religious dogmas are no longer accepted in their orthodox meaning, but every individual claims with faith in a supreme power of some kind. We all must have an ideal to govern our conduct and ensure contentment. But it is immaterial whether it be one of creed, art, science, or anything else, so long as it fulfills the function of a dematerializing force. It is essential to the peaceful existence of humanity as a whole that one common conception should prevail. While I have failed to obtain any evidence in support of the contentions of psychologists and spiritualists, I have proved to my complete satisfaction the automatism of life, not only through continuous observations of individual actions, but even more conclusively, certain generalizations. These amount to a discovery which I consider the greatest moment in society. which I shall name well. I got the first inkling of this astonishing truth. I was still a very young man, but for many years I interpreted what I noted simply as coincidence. Namely, whenever either myself or a person to whom I was attached or a cause to which I was devoted was hurt by others in a particular way which might be best popularly characterized as the most unfair imaginable. I experienced this singular and undefinable pain, which, for the want of a better term, I have qualified as cosmic. And shortly thereafter, and invariably, those who had inflicted it came to grief. After many such cases, I confided this to a number of friends who had the opportunity to convince themselves of the theory of which I have gradually formulated, and which may be stated in the following few words. Our bodies are of similar construction and exposed to the same external forces. This results in likeness of response and concordance of the general activities of which all our social and other rules and laws are based. We are automata, entirely controlled by the forces being tossed about like corks on the surface of the water, taking the results of the impulses from the outside of the will. The movements and the other actions we perform are always like those seemingly quite independent from one another. We are connected by invisible links. As long as the organism is in perfect order, it responds accurately to the agents that prompt it. The moment that there is some derangement in the individual, the self-preservative mind everyone understands, of course, that if one becomes deaf, as his eyes weaken, or his limbs injured, the chances for his continued existence are less. But this is also true, and perhaps more so, of certain defects in the brain which drive the automaton more or less of that vital quality that causes destruction. A very sensitive and observant being with its highly developed mechanism all intact, acting with precision in obedience to the changing conditions of the environment, down with a transcending mechanical intelligence, enabling him to evade perils too subtle to directly perceive. When he comes in contact with others, his controlling organs are radically faulty. That sense asserts itself, and he feels out at hundreds of times, providing others the magnitude of attention subject, believing that through combined systematic effort results of incalculable value to the world be attained. The idea of constructing an automaton to bear out my theory presented itself to me early, but I did not begin active work until 1895, when I started my wireless investigation. During the succeeding 2 or 3 years, a number of automatic mechanisms the actuated from a distance were constructed by me and exhibited to visitors in my laboratory. In 1896, however, I designed a complete machine capable of a multitude of operations. But the consummation of my labors was delayed until late in 1897. This machine was illustrated and described in my article in the magazine by in other periodicals of that time, and when first shown at the beginning of 1898, it created a sensation such as no other invention of mine. In November 1898, as the basic patents of the novel art was granted to me, but only at the examiner-in-chief of the company's board could witness the performance, what I claimed seemed unbelievable. I remember that when later I called upon an official in Washington offering the invention to the government, he burst out in laughter upon my telling him what I had accomplished. Nobody thought then that there was the faintest prospect of perfecting such a device. It is unfortunate that in this patent, following the advice of my attorneys, I indicated the control as being effective with the meaning of a single circuit and a well-known form of detector. The reason that I had not yet secured protection of my methods and apparatus for individualization. As a matter of fact, my boats were controlled with joint action of several circuits, and interference of every kind was excluded. Most generally, I employed receiving circuits in the form of loops, including condensers, because the discharges of my high-tension transmitter ionized the air in the laboratory, so that even a very small aerial would draw electricity from the surrounding atmosphere for hours. Just to give an idea, I found, for instance, that a bulb 12 inches in diameter, highly exhausted, and with one single terminal to which a short wire was attached, would deliver well on to 1,000 successive flashes before all charge of the air in the laboratory was neutralized. The loop form of receiver was not sensitive to such a disturbance, and it is curious to note that it is becoming popular at this late date. In reality, it collects much less energy tutorials or a long-grounded wire, but so happens that it does away with a number of defects inherent in the present wireless devices. In demonstrating my invention before audiences, the visitors were requested to ask questions, however involved, and the automaton would answer them by signs. This was considered magic at the time, but was extremely simple, for it was myself who gave the replies by means of device. At the same period, another larger tell-automatic boat was constructed, a photograph of which was shown in the October 1919 number of the Electrical Experimenter. It was controlled by loops having several turns placed in the hull, which was made entirely watertight and capable of submergence. The apparatus was similar to that used in the first, with the exception certain special features I introduced as, for example, incandescent lamps, which afforded a visible evidence of the proper functioning of the machine. These automata, controlled within the range of vision of the operator, were, however, the first and rather crude steps in the evolution of the art of tele-automatics as I had conceived it. The next logical improvement was its application to automatic mechanisms beyond the limits of vision and at great distances from the center of control. And I have ever since advocated their employment as instruments of warfare in preference to guns. The importance of this now seems to be recognized if I am to judge from casual announcements through the press of achievements which are said to be extraordinary but contain no merit of novelty whatever. In an imperfect manner, it is practical that the existing wireless plans to launch an aeroplane have it follow a certain approximate course and perform some operation at a distance of many hundreds of miles. A machine of this kind can also be mechanically controlled in several ways, and I have no doubt that it may prove of some usefulness. But there are, to my best knowledge, no instrumentalities in existence today with which such an object can be accomplished in a precise manner. I have devoted years of study to this matter and have evolved means making such and greater wonders easily realizable. As stated on a previous occasion, when I was a student at college, I conceived a flying machine quite unlike the present one.